Have you ever wondered why the nicest people are often the ones who get hurt the most? It starts early. You're taught that kindness is a virtue, that if you're good, respectful, and generous, the world will reward you. So you smile when you don't feel like smiling. You forgive when your gut screams to walk away. You help people who would never lift a finger for you. At first, it feels noble. You believe you're building meaningful relationships. But as the years pass, something inside you breaks. The very people you once helped begin to ignore. You dismiss you, even use you. Slowly it hits you. Kindness is not always seen as strength. In fact, in a world that respects power over virtue, excessive kindness becomes your blind spot, your hidden vulnerability. This isn't just a personal story. It's a psychological pattern repeated through history. And unless you see it for what it truly is, you'll be trapped by the very thing you once believed would protect you. They told you kindness was a strength, that if you were soft-spoken, empathetic, generous people would return the favor, that if you gave enough of yourself, your time, your attention, your forgiveness, eventually you'd be loved for it. But they never warned you what would happen when kindness becomes your identity, when it's no longer a choice but a compulsion. What they never told you is that kindness without boundaries is not strength, it's exposure. And in a world that senses weakness like blood in the water, exposure is a dangerous thing. You've felt it, haven't you? That sting in your chest when someone walks over you with a smile because they know they can. That hollow moment when you realize your silence wasn't seen as wisdom, but as submission. That ache of betrayal, not from enemies, but from the very people you thought would protect you in return. This is the painful truth no one tells you when you make yourself too agreeable, too available, too accommodating. People stop valuing you. Kindness without assertiveness becomes predictable, and what's predictable becomes invisible. You think being nice earns loyalty, but what it often attracts is entitlement. Because in the psychology of power, human beings don't respect what they can control. They respect what pushes back. They respect what forces them to question themselves. But you were taught to smile through discomfort, to say yes, even when your soul screamed no. Not because you were weak, but because you were conditioned to believe that saying no made you a bad person. And so you betrayed yourself, quietly, consistently, politely. That's the real tragedy. You didn't just suffer because others mistreated you. You suffered because you believed you had to let them. This isn't about becoming bitter. It's about becoming clear. Kindness is not the problem. But unknowing, unchecked, self-erasing kindness is. Powerful kindness, the kind that transforms people and earns respect, is never desperate. It's measured. It's given when you decide, not when others demand. It's kindness that stands tall, not kindness that kneels in fear of conflict. So the next time you catch yourself shrinking to make others comfortable, remember this: the world may applaud your kindness in public, but in private it calculates what it can take from you next. And unless you draw a line, they'll keep taking until there's nothing left. You've been taught to seek love, to be warm, likable, easy to approach. You were told that being loved is the ultimate form of acceptance. But here's the contradiction: no one warned you about love is fragile. Fear is remembered. Think about it. How many people once loved you and then vanished? How many people claimed loyalty and broke it the moment it was no longer convenient? That's because love for most people is conditional. It shifts with mood, with circumstance, with rumor. It fades with time, erodes with mistakes. You can give someone your heart for years only to watch them walk away after a single misunderstanding. That's the painful volatility of love. It's beautiful, yes, but utterly unreliable as a foundation for power. But fear is different. Fear doesn't fade. It etches itself into the mind like a scar. It survives memory loss, emotional confusion, even time. It's primal, biological, and in the hierarchy of human behavior, what we fear deeply and quietly we respect. Not the kind of fear that humiliates or turns into hatred. That kind of fear is destructive. It invites rebellion. Know what I'm talking about is measured fear, controlled fear, fear that breeds restraint, the kind of fear that keeps someone from crossing a line because they know the cost, not because you yelled, not because you threatened, but because they've seen what happens when others went too far. This is not about being a tyrant. It's about mastering the psychology of influence. People rarely respect what makes them comfortable. They respect what challenges them, what keeps them alert, what makes them hesitate before acting impulsively. And here's the secret no one teaches: you don't need to instill fear constantly, you just need to instill it wisely. A single decisive moment, a clear boundary, a well-timed silence, that's all it takes to shift how people treat you forever. When you're loved, people want to be close to you. When you're respected through fear, they think twice before betraying you. And that pause, that hesitation, might be the very thing that saves you. So ask yourself honestly, do you want to be temporarily adored or permanently respected? Because fear, when used with restraint, leaves a legacy that love rarely can. Power has always seduced us with the illusion of love. The belief that if you're admired, if you're adored, your position is secure. That being liked protects you. That popularity creates loyalty. But that illusion is deadly. Because when you build your power on love alone, you build it on sand. Love is emotional. It's reactive. It's full of expectations and silent contracts. And the truth is, people don't just love you for who you are, they love how you make them feel. Which means the moment you stop feeding their emotional needs, the moment you disappoint them or make a decision they don't agree with, their love turns cold, fast. And then what, you're no longer their inspiration, you become their enemy. Not because you did something wrong, but because you failed to match their fantasy. This is why leaders who strive to be loved often fall the hardest, not at the hands of enemies, but by those who once applauded them. The moment they assert authority, the crowd turns. Because people don't love power, they envy it. But fear cuts deeper. When people fear you, not with terror, but with reverent caution, they monitor themselves. They don't challenge you emotionally. They don't cross boundaries for the sake of testing limits. They tread carefully because they've felt the weight of your presence. Not violence, not cruelty, just consequence. This is what Machiavelli understood centuries ago, that love is a gift, but fear is a tool. Love makes people cheer. Fear makes people obey. And no empire was ever built on applause. Empires are built on structure, on discipline, on a silent agreement that crossing a line comes with a cost. Do you know what happens when a leader is only loved? They hesitate. They second-guess themselves to keep approval. They dilute their standards so no one is offended. And little by little, their authority dies, not in one moment, but in a slow, silent erosion of self-respect. Because when you rely on love, you lose control. You become addicted to acceptance. You water down your message to stay likable, and eventually you stand for nothing. But when you are respected and, yes, feared, you don't have to perform. You don't have to chase affection. You command it without asking. This is not about being heartless. It's about being unshakable. A feared leader doesn't need to prove anything. He doesn't need to shout or beg. His strength is known. His boundaries are remembered. And when decisions must be made, he makes them not to be popular, but to be effective. So no, don't choose to be loved. Not first. Choose to be respected. Choose to be remembered. And if you must, let fear do what love never could: protect your power. Loyalty is one of the most romanticized ideals in human history. We speak of it in absolutes, as if it were eternal, as if loyalty once given is unconditional and unbreakable. But that belief, it's dangerous. It blinds you. It sedates you. And it makes you forget one uncomfortable but undeniable truth: most loyalty is transactional. People stay loyal only as long as it serves them. Not because they're evil, not because they're disloyal by nature, but because human beings are driven by self-interest, and if you fail to see that, you set yourself up to be betrayed by your own illusions. Look back on your life. How many people promised to stay by your side until they didn't? How many friends said, "I've got your back," right before they disappeared the moment things got uncomfortable? That's not betrayal. That's human nature at work. Because when circumstances change, when you lose status, influence, money, or usefulness, loyalty often fades like mist in the sun. People recalibrate. They reassess. They quietly ask themselves, is staying loyal to you still beneficial to me? This is why a leader must never confuse loyalty with affection. People can love you and still leave you. They can praise you and still plot against you. Their words are cheap, their promises even cheaper. What really matters is this: what are the consequences if they betray you? When loyalty is based on affection, it's a weak thread, easily broken. But when loyalty is reinforced by structure, by mutual benefit, clear hierarchy, and calculated fear, it becomes something else: respect-based allegiance. It's not poetic, it's not dramatic, but it's real. The wise leader doesn't rely on feelings, he relies on leverage. He knows who's loyal because it suits them, and who remains loyal even when it doesn't. That's the rare kind, the ones forged in hardship, not convenience. If you want true loyalty, don't ask for it. Don't beg for it. Create an environment where disloyalty costs more than it's worth. Because in the end, loyalty is not about hearts, it's about incentives. And when the incentives are gone, only the calculated few will still stand beside you. Those are the ones who matter. The rest were never loyal to begin with. Power without structure is chaos, but structure without force is fiction. Every society, every system, every relationship you've ever known operates, whether you see it or not, on these two forces: law and power. Limits and enforcement. Order and consequence. Without both, leadership crumbles. Laws, written or unspoken, create the appearance of fairness. They outline what is right, what is acceptable, what will be tolerated. But make no mistake, a law without enforcement is nothing but decoration. It's a symbol people learn to ignore. You can set as many boundaries as you like. You can write down rules, demand respect, ask for honesty. But unless you are prepared to enforce those standards with consistency and consequence, they are just words, no more powerful than air. Likewise, raw force without principle becomes barbarism. When you rely only on dominance, people may obey you out of fear, but they will also resent you, plot against you, and wait for your downfall. That kind of leadership doesn't last. It burns bright and dies fast. So the real art, the balance few ever master, is knowing how to combine both. To build a system of order rooted in logic and fairness, and then to back it with a presence powerful enough to command respect. This is where true authority begins. Not in shouting or threats, but in silent certainty. If the law is broken, the response will come. Not emotionally, not impulsively, but decisively. You don't need to react to every offense, but you must never allow repeated offenses to go unanswered. Why? Because people don't just watch your actions, they watch your tolerances. They test you, quietly, consistently, without warning. And every time you let something slide, every time you let someone overstep without consequence, you teach them who you really are. You reveal the weakness behind the principle. To be respected, your laws must feel real. And for them to feel real, they must be backed with the credible possibility of force. This is not about violence, it's about consequence. It's about the psychological weight of accountability, a weight that keeps systems intact, boundaries honored, and leadership effective. So don't just set rules, enforce them. Don't just ask for respect, command it. Don't just lead with ideals, lead with leverage. Because without the quiet strength to uphold what you believe in, even the most noble law becomes a joke. Power, when fully exposed, becomes predictable, and what's predictable becomes weak. This is the fatal mistake most people make when they rise in status. They talk too much. They reveal too much. They try to explain every move, every thought, every emotion, as if transparency is a virtue. It's not. Transparency is a risk. If people can fully read you, they can prepare for you. If they know your limits, your fears, your boundaries, they know how to push them. They know how to manipulate your triggers. That's why mystery isn't optional in leadership, it's essential. What people don't know about you protects you more than anything you say. A true leader understands this deeply. He doesn't fill every silence. He doesn't defend every decision. He doesn't explain himself to seek validation. Instead, he lets his presence speak for itself. He knows that the most terrifying force in the room is the one you don't fully understand. Silence is not weakness, it's pressure. It forces others to confront their own uncertainty. It creates tension, and in that tension, they imagine your power as larger than it is. Because here's a truth most never admit. The mind fills silence with projection. The less you say, the more people wonder. The less you show, the more they assume. And assumptions, when fed with strategic silence, become leverage. You don't have to scream to be feared. You don't have to explain to be respected. In fact, the more you explain, the more you reveal that you seek approval, and nothing weakens authority faster than needing to be understood. A mysterious leader creates an invisible boundary. People hesitate around him. They second-guess themselves. They prepare more carefully. And that preparation, born out of respect or quiet fear, is what preserves control. So let them guess. Let them wonder what you're thinking. Let your silence echo louder than their noise. Because once people feel like they have you figured out, they stop fearing you. And the moment they stop fearing you, they stop respecting you. Never let them see the full blueprint. Never give them all your patterns. Power is not just what you hold, it's what they can't quite grasp. So speak less, reveal less, and let mystery do what words never could. Guard your authority in silence. The most dangerous man in the room is not the loud one. It's the quiet one, the one watching. Because while everyone else scrambles to be seen to impress, to control the narrative he is absorbing, calculating, dissecting human behavior in silence. True leadership begins not with command, but with observation. Every interaction you witness, every facial twitch, every inconsistency in someone's words, these are signals, micro-confessions. And if you're truly still mentally and emotionally, you will see them. The nervous smile, the forced enthusiasm, the slight pause before a lie. These are not accidents, they are windows. But most people are too reactive to notice. They speak to prove something. They react to defend something. They move too quickly and miss the game being played right in front of them. The true strategist resists that urge. He watches, he waits. Not out of fear, but out of precision. Because here's the paradox of power. The more you act without observation, the weaker your actions become. But the more you observe before you act, the more devastating your timing becomes. When you strike too soon, your enemies adapt. When you reveal your thoughts too early, your influence evaporates. But when you observe, learn, and strike when no one expects it, that's when your authority becomes legendary. Think of the lion. It does not roar to announce its hunt. It crouches, it studies, it lets the prey grow comfortable, complacent, until one move changes everything. That is what power looks like when governed by patience. And this isn't just about confrontation. It applies to everything: negotiation, relationships, leadership, even betrayal. Let others underestimate you. Let them think you're passive. Let them assume your silence means ignorance. You lose nothing by allowing others to misjudge you, but you gain everything by knowing exactly who they are before they know who you truly are. Observation is control. It's the space between stimulus and response. It's where you gather leverage before you move. So don't be in a rush to react. Be in a rush to understand. And when the time comes, act with such clarity, such calculated intensity that no one forgets it. Because when you strike after watching quietly, you don't just win the moment you own the room. Power feels real until it doesn't. It wears the armor of certainty. It commands rooms, shapes nations, and bends people to its will. But underneath all that, beneath the rituals, the titles to the deference, power is nothing more than a shared illusion. It exists only because people agree it exists, because people act as though it's real. But what happens when they stop agreeing? What happens when the quiet belief that holds your authority together begins to unravel slowly, subtly, without warning? You see, power is not held, it is performed, and every performance requires an audience. You can have the position, the title, the money, but if people no longer believe in your right to lead, if the silent contract of credibility breaks, then all your tools are useless. This is why the wisest leaders don't just lead. They manage perception. They maintain the illusion. They sustain belief in their authority not through force alone, but through presence, symbolism, timing, and mystery. Power is not about how loudly you speak. It's about how deeply others believe they should listen. And this belief is fragile. It's not reinforced once and forgotten. It has to be renewed, reaffirmed, strategically challenged just enough to prove its strength, but never so much that it crumbles. The tyrant forgets this. He thinks that once he has control, it's permanent. He confuses fear with legitimacy. And because of that arrogance, he overreaches, he breaks the illusion by trying to make it absolute. That's when people stop pretending. That's when power shatters. The real leader, on the other hand, walks a finer line. He knows that his influence only lasts as long as others believe it should. So he becomes a master of tension, never too obvious, never too invisible. Always present, always watching, always letting people feel just enough uncertainty to respect the structure they've agreed to uphold. Your authority is not cement, it's smoke. Beautiful, strategic smoke that only holds shape, as long as you control the air around it. So don't get lazy. Don't get drunk on the illusion. Don't forget that every day people are unconsciously renegotiating your role in their minds. Every move you make is either reinforcing their belief or eroding it. True power doesn't come from domination. It comes from maintenance, from understanding that you're not just leading people, you're managing a collective idea. And when you master that idea, when you know how to feed it, shape it, and protect it, you don't just hold power. You become it. There's a price no one warns you about when you step into power, the weight of emotional distance. People admire leadership from the outside, but few truly understand what it demands from the inside. Because real leadership doesn't live in comfort. It doesn't live in emotional consensus or mutual validation. It lives in clarity. And clarity often requires detachment, not coldness, not cruelty, but a separation between your decisions and your need to be liked. The more you rise, the lonelier it gets. Not because you've done something wrong, but because fewer people can understand your position. Your choices become heavier. Your consequences become larger. And with that weight, your relationships shift. People don't see your burdens, they see your outcomes. And when they don't agree with those outcomes, they project disappointment onto you. They assume you're selfish, distant, or harsh. But what they don't see is the sacrifice, the emotional restraint it takes to make the hard call to say no when everyone else wants to hear yes. This is where most leaders fall, not from lack of intelligence or strategy, but from emotional dependence. They want to be understood. They want to be liked. They want to be seen as the good one. But power doesn't reward goodness. It rewards decisiveness. You can't lead while begging for emotional reassurance. You can't uphold standards if you're afraid to disappoint people. You must be willing to be misunderstood, to be judged, to be hated for the right reasons. Detachment is not the absence of empathy. It's the control of it. It's the ability to feel deeply but act wisely. To not let personal attachments distort professional decisions. To not let guilt bend your spine when clarity demands firmness. You will lose people on this path. You will feel the sting of distance. But in that solitude, something powerful is born: your independence. Your ability to stand alone. To choose truth over comfort. Mission over approval. Vision over validation. Because leadership is not about how much you care. It's about what you prioritize when everything is on the line. And when emotions rage and chaos swirls, the leader who can detach calmly, clearly, without flinching is the one who remains standing. It's easy to look powerful when everything is going according to plan. It's easy to lead when the sky is clear, when systems are stable and people are cooperative. But that isn't where real authority is revealed. Real authority emerges in chaos, in crisis, in the moment when the structure begins to crack and everyone else starts to panic. That's the test. Not of your words, but of your presence. Because when pressure hits, most people collapse into emotion. They look for someone to blame. They search for permission to fall apart. And the moment they sense that their leader is just as panicked as they are, respect evaporates. You can't fake composure in crisis. People feel your energy before they hear your words. They sense it subtly, instantly, when you've lost control. And once they see that loss, once the illusion of certainty is shattered, it's almost impossible to rebuild. But the opposite is also true. If you remain calm when others lose their grip, if you speak slowly when others raise their voice, if you hold stillness in your posture while storms rage around you, you become unforgettable. Because in times of uncertainty, the most valuable currency is certainty itself. Not arrogance, not overconfidence, but that deep, grounded stillness that says, "I've seen worse. I know what needs to be done. Follow me." This is the kind of leadership people remember, not because it shouts, but because it anchors. Crisis doesn't destroy true leaders. It reveals them. It strips away theatrics, exposes the performative ones, and distills leadership down to its purest form, presence under pressure. And here's the hidden truth: you don't need all the answers. You don't need to predict every outcome. You simply need to stand unshaken while everyone else searches for solid ground. In doing so, you become that ground. Because when fear floods the room, people don't follow brilliance, they follow strength. Not brute force, but emotional strength. Psychological command, that still voice that doesn't flinch. So if you want to be respected beyond position, If you want your authority to echo in the minds of those around you long after the chaos is gone, then earn it in the storm. Let the crisis do its job. Let it expose who's pretending. And while it does, you remain still, so still they can't help but trust you. In a world obsessed with being liked, the real strength lies in being respected. You don't need to please everyone, you need to protect your boundaries. You don't need constant validation, you need clarity of purpose. Life will test your limits, your loyalty, and your self-worth, especially when you speak truth or refuse to be controlled. The lesson is simple but not easy. Stand firm. Be calm in chaos. Use silence strategically. And remember, real power isn't about dominating others, but mastering yourself. When you stop chasing approval and start commanding presence, everything changes. Respect lasts longer than applause. Discipline holds more value than attention. And when life becomes uncertain, the one who holds the calm wins. The ability to speak and be heard. But behind all of that power hides its true cost, the responsibility to see human nature clearly, and the burden of being alone with that knowledge. The greatest mistake people make about power is believing it comes from being liked, from being charismatic, from being loved. And while love is a beautiful sentiment, it is not a reliable strategy. Love is soft, it bends, it forgives, it forgets. But power, real power, it does not forgive weakness. It does not survive on emotion. It survives on structure, consequence, and clarity. That's why those who seek to be loved often end up betrayed. Not because people are evil, but because people are self-interested. And when your leadership depends on their approval, you have already placed your strength in their hands. The bitter truth is this: to be respected, you must be willing to be feared. Not hated, not resented, not cruel, but feared in the most strategic sense of the word. Feared for your calm under pressure, feared for the line you will not let others cross, feared for the fact that you don't need to explain yourself every time someone is uncomfortable with your standards. This kind of fear is not abuse, it's clarity. It's the message that says, I will not be manipulated, I will not be emotionally blackmailed, I will not dilute myself for your comfort. And here's what most people never realize: those who are feared in the right way are also the ones most quietly respected. Because fear, when measured, when fair, when principled, creates stability. It builds order. It gives others the sense that someone is in control. And in a chaotic world, control is comforting, even if they'll never admit it out loud. But this path isn't easy. It requires a level of emotional strength that few are prepared for. The strength to stand alone. The strength to make decisions that won't be popular. The strength to draw boundaries that others will push against. And most of all, the strength to keep your face still while they try to provoke you into reacting. Because real power doesn't shout, it doesn't perform, it doesn't need to be constantly seen or explained. Real power watches, listens, waits, and moves when it chooses, not when it's expected. This is where so many fail. They confuse being reactive with being strong. They think loud voices and constant presence create impact. But presence without restraint is noise. And noise is quickly forgotten. What lingers, what people remember, is silence, stillness, a gaze that sees through pretenses, a posture that doesn't flinch when others raise their voices, the quiet confidence that says, I've already made peace with being misunderstood. That's emotional strength. Not the strength to win every argument, but the strength to not need to. Not the strength to control everyone, but the strength to not be controlled by anyone. This is especially true for men in today's world, where masculinity is constantly challenged, redefined, or diluted. Many men are taught to seek softness, to be agreeable, to lead by making everyone feel safe. But safety without structure becomes chaos. Kindness without clarity becomes weakness. And love without the backbone of earned respect turns into dependency. So what's the answer? Be kind but not indulgent. Be wise but not passive. Be strong but not cruel. And most importantly, be feared but never hated. Because hatred creates enemies. Fear, when balanced with fairness, creates order. The best leaders, whether in business, family relationships, or personal life, understand the subtle balance between presence and distance. They give praise sparingly so that it has weight. They speak with intention so that silence becomes a message in itself. They don't demand loyalty, they build systems where betrayal costs too much to attempt. You don't need to control people. You only need to control your reactions, and your environment will begin to respond accordingly. And when crisis hits, and it will, don't explain, don't panic, don't perform, stand still, Stay calm, hold the line. Because in that moment when everyone else is scrambling, your stillness becomes the anchor they didn't know they were looking for. And the respect you command in that moment, not the love you once hoped for, will be what protects your legacy. So ask yourself truly, do you want to be admired or do you want to be followed? Because admiration fades. Fear and respect, when earned through presence and discipline, create movements. You don't need everyone to love you. You need to become the man people are careful around, the one they speak of with lowered voices when you leave the room. Not because they're afraid of punishment, but because they respect your boundaries, your discipline, and your unwillingness to be swayed by weakness. That's the man who lasts. That's the man who leads. And that's the man the world cannot ignore, because he no longer needs their permission to be powerful.